So all of those things are part of the digital technologies curriculum and are more aimed at students really understanding how things happen under the hood. So they're more informed for life, but also so that they're prepared to be our next generation of developers of the next cool app or the next evolution of AI.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Hey folks, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host Paul Spain, and today we're with Julie McMahon from Grok Academy. Welcome along, Julie. Great to have you on the show.
Kia ora, Paul. Thank you for having me along today.
Oh, it's a real privilege to have you here. Maybe before we delve in, we're going to really talk a lot around digital education, the role of technology and AI within the education sphere, particularly from a school perspective. Be great to hear a little bit about your background because you've been working in this field for a long time, and I'm sure listeners would be curious to know a little bit about that.
Yes, so I have actually been in the digital technologies education space for over 30 years. I hate to give away my age. The last 20 years...
So you're at least 30 then?
Yeah, I'm at least 30. And the last 20 years has been over here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I obviously am North American, and so I was actually involved in the early days in some of the first telecommunications education networks in the United States and started developing my interest then. 20 years here teaching digital technologies down in Otepoti, Dunedin, had a faculty of technology, and I also worked with Otago University with their master's students as a curriculum lecturer, so helping onboard that next generation of digital technologies teachers. Throughout my time, I have also served as a president and a committee member of Digital Technologies Teachers Aotearoa, which is our subject association, and worked on the current curriculum development in the area of digital technologies and also the education standards for NCEA in the area. So I kind of across digital technologies education in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And about a little over a year ago, decided to put those skills to use in a slightly different direction, and now I'm a lead educator with Grok Academy. And I know we'll go into that a little bit more probably, but we're an education non-for-profit in digital technology space.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting, and I'm certainly looking forward to hearing more about that. Maybe just a sort of a quick overview for those that haven't heard of Grok Academy before, and what Grok Academy's mission is. Yeah.
So Grok Academy, we're an education not-for-profit. Our big mission is on bringing digital technologies education out to everybody, equity of access. We really are focused on making sure we get a diverse range of learners exposed to digital technologies because we need diversity within the workforce. And we also want to highlight career pathways because tech is the foundation for every other industry, and we want to highlight what those exciting career pathways are. Grok is a non-for-profit based in Australia, and we have some funding, generous funding through WiseTech Global, and we're able to provide our resources free in Australia and Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Yeah,
starting
that's really
in
cool.
2024, so we'll talk about
We're
that.
right into it, yeah. Oh, fantastic. Well, big thank you, of course, to our show partners, to 1NZ, 2 Degrees, Spark, HP, and Gorilla Technology for their support of the show. But let's jump in. I'm keen to hear how you look at the landscape when we talk about technology in school or digital technologies, and maybe you can tell listeners why you use the term digital technologies, how we would look at that differently from information technology or other titles within the education sector. And your thoughts on the current landscape in New Zealand.
So that's a great question because to the general public, digital technologies, digital literacy, digital citizenship, they all kind of bundle together, and there isn't a lot of differentiation. And also we hear the term digital native quite a bit.
Yes,
So I
yes.
thought I would unpack that and how it really is impacting schools.
That'll be great.
So one of the things we assume, because our young people and even young teachers coming into the field, they've grown up with devices, with the internet, social media, that they're digital natives. But just because they're digital natives and they're okay with using apps and they're quite proficient in it, their digital literacy skills, they haven't been honed in on that because they haven't been really shown how do we, save files, things get magically saved into the cloud. How do we, structure documents, spreadsheets, all of those things that make us digital literate and able to sort of critically evaluate what's the best tool for the job.
Yeah,
So
there can be a lot of variation, can't
Yes.
there, in terms of experience and knowledge and expertise. And when I think back to teaching at what is now Auckland University of Technology, and actually I was a teenager when I was teaching there, and doing night classes and the like, and at that point, technology was new, and we didn't come in with so many assumptions. So we were teaching people, file formats to save in, where to save things, and so on. But these are the sorts of things now that it's often assumed that everybody knows. But of course, there are those variances in terms of knowledge.
Exactly. And so that's the digital literacy aspect. And those are the things that do need a coordinated approach and taught across the curriculum. So they're really important, for example, in maths, doing spreadsheets and graphing, or maybe in geography, and in our literacy subjects, really learning how to format a document, et cetera. And within digital technologies, which I'll explain in a minute, how to save files, how to in the correct format so that we can design a web page and have the correct linking, et cetera. But then within the curriculum, we have a subject called digital technologies. And digital technologies is really about those underlying computer science concepts that underpin our current AI or the apps that are developed, the logical thinking that goes into it, the computational thinking, also programming, and also design thinking. How do we design an app so that it's fit for purpose and that it's actually solving a problem? So all of those things are part of the digital technologies curriculum and are more aimed at students really understanding how things happen under the hood. So they're more informed for life, but also so that they're prepared to be our next generation of the developers of the next cool app or the next evolution of AI. And so I guess there's a disjunct between what's being actually taught, what's being expected to be taught in the classroom.
Yeah, and getting back to your point earlier around making sure that everyone has this, has the opportunity to learn. I think in the current age, the current time we're in, 100% everybody that goes goes through the education should be learning. And I don't know where you draw the line as to what's an appropriate level, but there should be a reasonably kind of high bar for what is considered the basics. In the same way we're seeing the government sort of want to make sure that people understand how to read and write and do maths and so on up to a particular level. We should be doing the same surely on a technology front. It's a digital world now, and without that we really disadvantage people.
That's exactly the digital technologies curriculum was put into place up through our year 10 learners, and so that they have that foundation in coding, in the computational thinking, to make some appropriate choices. Once they go on to those higher levels like NCA, they can start making choices. And we've especially found with females, with people who are maybe gender diverse or from a minority, they don't see themselves in tech roles. And if they don't see themselves as being successful in it or see a pathway early on, they tend to opt out and think this isn't for me. And it's really important that we do expose students by year 7 at the latest, and especially in that kind of year 6 to 10, so that they know that opportunities exist. And one of my favorite phrases that I learned at actually a Google Education Summit years ago was CS plus X. And it's kind of computer science plus the X factor plus your passion. So if you are, agriculture, if it's sport, if it's medicine, if it's business, whatever it is, technology underpins that today. So it's, I guess, providing students with insights into doing digital technologies as a career is not sitting behind a screen all day, just writing code. It's actually working with that area, your passion, your area of passion, and putting those things together to develop, something helpful, useful.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, what I would often argue is, doesn't matter what field somebody's going into, art, education, sports, and whatever career paths. It might be a welder, gas fitter, whatever. The stronger that technological learning up front, then the more successful you're likely to be in your given field. And as the world becomes more and more digital, you become more valuable within your given workplace if you've done those things. So yeah, that really resonates with me. So talk to me around the current things that you see when we look at there being a shortage often of teachers. It makes me wonder, what's the role of artificial intelligence? What's the role of technology to do some of the lifting for us? I look back, and maybe it's, I don't know, to the last time the national government were in, so maybe sort of 7 years or so back. I remember there being an announcement around online learning, and I was actually in the newsroom at what is TV3, was TV3 and MediaWorks at that point, and one of the well-known journalists and presenters saying to me how shocked they were and how crazy it was. And in my case, I shared with them my experience with what used to be called correspondence school, and having done some remote learning prior to and while my family was traveling overseas, and how that worked out, how that was absolutely brilliant in my case. And I've, heard other positive sort of stories around that sort of remote learning. And so I was able to sort of share that, and I'm not quite sure what's kind of what happened with that, with government changes and so on. But when I look at Grok Academy and a lot of things going on, online learning is an important part of the picture, isn't it?
So there are a couple of things. Yes, we are short of teachers, full stop, and we are desperately short of digital technologies teachers. I'll my own personal opinion, and from being in the university system, is that we ask teachers to get an undergrad in computer science or information science, and then go and do a master's in education to go back into the classroom. And usually, because we need so many tech workers, they're out and they have a job, and so we aren't getting very many digital technologies teachers coming into the classroom. So that is one issue. It's one issue that Grok Academy and other online learning platforms we're trying to solve. Yep. Support teachers to have an online platform that provides, a structured learning program, guides the students through, and then they can actually upskill themselves as well. Mm-hmm. One of the things I think we've all experienced through COVID, and I saw a transformation when I was during COVID with other teachers who weren't digital technologies teachers. They suddenly learned how to maybe put things online and teach in a different way. So that was actually quite beneficial, that part. That was one of the benefits to COVID. And just like we have hybrid workers now that work partially from home, partially in the office, we can see that we can engage students in different ways. We're never going to replace, I don't think, that face-to-face interaction.
I hope not.
No, it's the, students do like the relationship with the teacher and supporting them through. But if we have resources that are online that are quality, then we're supporting the teachers because they're busy with so many things. There are so many curriculum requirements. So I guess that's the landscape right now. Unfortunately, there are pros, I guess good and bad ed tech examples out there. Some are just sort of drill and kill, and that's just replacing, I guess, a worksheet, and it's an online worksheet. But we have this opportunity now, and I do see it as an opportunity with AI. We can actually build into ed tech platforms ways to give more personalized content to students. So you might have some sort of online pre-assessment, and you and I might go down totally different pathways depending on where we are. You might get different feedback, and you might be challenged. I might be put down and do some more, I guess, remediation problems or get extra support. And teachers don't often have that time. We're supposed to be differentiating in the classroom,
Yes.
but it's challenging. So structured AI used that way is actually going to be probably a real game changer. Different platforms are developing it. That's what one of our things with our next generation of Grok is, building that into our platform so that we are customizing the experience for learners and for teachers.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated how that could play out. When I think of my memory, it's far from perfect, and I think of different people that I work with. Some of them are are much better at perceiving certain little things than others, and I can imagine a scenario in a classroom, and maybe it sort of sounds a bit spooky, but where you've got the content being kind of temporarily recorded, and then an AI building up some knowledge around each individual. Oh, this person, this youngster loves playing cricket.
Mm-hmm.
They're a little bit more leaning to be distracted than to focus on the subject at hand. They love their maths and they're really good at it. They don't do so much on the this and that front and so on, and being able to build up those sort of profiles, somewhat automatically. And I can imagine that being actually really helpful for a teacher. And then as assignments and things are being put together, that the AI would play into what you were talking about in terms of the personalisation and so on. How ready do you think we are for these sorts of changes? Because as soon as you incorporate, for instance, with that example, you've got to have some sort of AI that's recording or listening in for a period of time, and you might automatically delete the recordings or what have you. But there's discomfort because this is a change to what we know and the world we know.
Yes, it is uncomfortable, and I think we all would probably prefer to do something how we've always done it, deliver a lesson, deliver an assessment task, how we've done it before. We know it works, but we also know that things like ChatGPT, these large language models, they have changed the landscape, and they're here. And so that is it's a challenge, but it's something that needs to be a focus for educators, because we need to maybe change how we think about doing assessment, not giving things that are just, getting the correct answer, because maybe, a large language model AI can spit out a correct answer. So it's thinking about how do we use that as a coach? How do we use it actually to help us as teachers, to create maybe some problem prompts, some writing prompts, some lesson plans. So it actually, if we see it as that positive, what is positive as far as AI, but just to say, well, I'm not ready for it. It's here. I do know big organizations, code.org, for example, Khan Academy, Grok Academy, were on the sort of advisory boards and those things. How can we support educators in using AI and in the classroom? So I think that's where the focus needs to be, is how do we use it productively, instead of just saying, oh, I don't want to know about it, or we should just ban it, because if you ban things, people find a way around them. But how can we find the positive in using those things in the classroom.
Yeah, and there's a balancing act. Banning things and allowing them. Do you give ChatGPT at any level to students at any age? Because it probably opens you up to all sorts on the net, and I guess it's probably similar challenge with what we've seen with the current government in terms of banning smartphones. I think there's one school of thought is no, you shouldn't ban things at all. On the flip side, we've got things like Network for Learning that's being used by a lot of schools to, manage and give access to appropriate online access with some boundaries around it into the school. And if you've got a smartphone, a mobile connection, you basically bypass whatever a school's tried to put in place using those techniques. And we see some of the fallout from that with nude pictures that get passed around and can cause a lot of harm and so on. But of course, you can never completely control these things because as soon as school's over for the day, those boundaries all fall away. So these aren't easy decisions to make, are they?
They aren't. And I do think when you try to ban technologies in schools, it's almost like students want to use. I remember in the old days of brick cell phone when we said you couldn't have it, they figured out how to put their phone in their blazer pocket and still be texting with their thumb. Or if you don't have a cell phone but you've got your BYOD device, you can still use a messaging app to communicate. So I think there are challenges to banning. It's usually moves those sort of communication things to other areas. I know ChatGPT really shouldn't be actually legally, I think, used for people under 17 years of age. So I think it's using AI tools that are specific for education, again, like things that the teacher can monitor, and it's giving them some writing prompts and being their coach.
So does that mean you should be banning the ChatGPT and giving them an alternative at that point, or do you not block it?
I think it is showing alternatives. Maybe I think in schools, and I don't actually have the legality on this, but I believe in schools it shouldn't be allowed for access for people under a certain age. So the schools might have a legal obligation around that, but I haven't checked. I've read that.
Yeah.
I haven't checked the New Zealand law on that. So I think it's providing alternatives, and it's also those discussions. The other interesting thing around that is that if you are, I guess, giving homework or tasks that students can do at home where it's open slather access to things like ChatGPT.
Sure.
So that makes an inequity right there because students who have internet access and have access at home to those, they can just whip through maybe their homework, whereas students who aren't having that same access. And it's kind of the same thing, though, that's always been with access to internet or access to parents who are guiding you through your homework, or an older brother or sister. So I think having assignments or homework assignments that make it really easy to just splat out some answers on ChatGPT, that's where we have to rethink, because the motivation to use those things will go away if we're not making it a reward for going and getting your homework done very quickly on that. And my other, I guess, big thing that as part of digital technologies, the computer science, we should actually be looking at what are the foundations for AI, how does it actually work, what are the principles, and getting students to actually think about the pros and cons, like how is AI actually helping us to diagnose, cancers and things like that. What are those benefits? How is AI being used to sort of form our feeds and maybe have biases and manipulate it? I think those are the more important conversations to have in schools rather than ban, not ban.
That's great.
It's
I like that. It's so important that we help, and it's not just youngsters, right? Help all of us better understand some of these realities and challenges. Now, when I think around AI, one of the early discussions, which I haven't heard much on, probably for at least 6 months, one of the early discussions, was very much sort of leaning towards banning and then very quickly leaning towards using technology to detect whether students were maybe handing in assignments that have been generated with AI. And of course, there's variations on that, certainly at a university level, around individuals that might kind of outsource the production of an assignment to somebody, might be somebody else elsewhere in the world, and so on. Now, before we jumped in, one of the things that you mentioned that is a technique is, for instance, if a student's working in platform Google or Microsoft with Docs, and you've got track changes on, then you can sort of see when maybe a whole big block of text has been dropped in versus it being entered over a period of time. So there are probably elements like that, and there's always ways around them, of course, that could be part of the picture. How do you look at those things, and how much could AI technology maybe help us there? If an AI, for instance, knows Paul Spain's personal writing style, how long I take to write things, the language I use, and then it compares it with something that's been generated online. And again, you can train your online version to be very much like yourself. Are those things helpful? Are they necessary? Or is it just a matter of coming up with a range of different types of assignments and tasks to encourage learning?
I actually had a good conversation about this recently. So, yes, those techniques that teachers have been using actually even before, the ChatGPT, large language models, having students use, Microsoft Online Docs or Google Docs with the revision mode on, with the track changes on, so that they could see when things were maybe holus bolus, just copied and pasted from the internet. So those techniques are still going to come into play with things like ChatGPT. Different from university level, but high school, intermediate, you usually know your students quite well. You know their writing style, you know their capabilities, and if they've suddenly turned in an online document that's totally different from something that they would ever write in classroom, you can pick that up right away. I know at universities and high schools throughout New Zealand, we've been using things like Turnitin to detect plagiarism, to detect copies online. So those things are already in place. And like I said, I know that different online platforms are actually building in the AI, so you can assign students, and they have to do it within this controlled AI platform, so the teacher can actually see their progress through, and then the program is actually restricted, so it's not giving them the answer, it's guiding them with some personalized prompts and things like that. So I think those are all really good. I think the danger right now, where the technology stands right now in these kind of AI detectors, is we do know that AI has hallucinations. Oh my gosh, I couldn't say that word. And
that happens to me sometimes.
Has these sort of false positives.
Yes.
So there's a danger that you turn something in and an AI detector says it isn't your writing, and there have been cases of this. Somebody, stood down from school when it actually was their writing. So we have to be very careful that we're not just relying on an AI to check an AI. I think we need some more structure, at least for right now.
Yeah, I don't think you can probably usually do that in a manner where you're entirely reliant. And I would imagine if you've got an AI coming back saying this content is has not been created by an individual, that it then needs to give a list of the reasonings and so on. So then, there's not just kind of one judge that's technology. That's takes us back to movies like Judge Dredd. But there's a need to involve the educator in that process, isn't there? And it is important that we're not just doing things that don't utilize AI, because of course that's part of the learning is how to use the AI tools, and we should be leaning in, and they should be an important part of the learning journey as well.
And from a strictly digital technology standpoint, I know that some people are saying, well, why should we teach coding? Because ChatGPT will whip out a program, so we don't really need to teach anybody to code anymore. But again, it doesn't always give the best answer or the correct answer, and you need those analytical skills. You need to understand the code enough. You need to understand the prompts. You need to understand the problem that you're trying to solve. So in order to even critically evaluate whether AI is giving us something that's reasonable or not reasonable, we need to have those foundational understandings of how things work under the hood, and be teaching those skills. How do we maybe refine a prompt, or maybe as a teacher use ChatGPT to have different prompts and then allow students to go off and work on them on their own. So I think that is that's really important, that we don't just ban it. And also we're using it all the time. It's been in our Google Suite. It's completing our emails and our texts, and that's how we do searches. So again, I think it's the critical evaluation. But if we say that we don't need to teach students to code anymore because we'll have AI to do it, then who's going to make the next generation of our tools?
Yeah. Look, I think there's a lot of value in learning to code, and even for those who end up in roles where they never ever have to code, having that sort of deep understanding and that knowledge is immensely useful in terms of understanding technology and the possibilities. Okay, now sometimes I like to go out there with weird and wonderful thoughts. We've talked a little bit about AI and where it can or potentially can fit in, and there's you could extrapolate that out to some pretty interesting results, and now we're sort of seeing a number of companies that are working very hard on humanoid robots. We're told these things are going to buy what Tesla's working on, supposedly is going to be maybe in line with or a fraction of a year's worth of a teacher's salary. Can you see a time in the future where our real teachers are going to be assisted by robots that are able to assist in class, assist on on the sports field, all these sorts of things? Is that something that scares you or makes some sense?
I think in the past, I had actually taken a group of students here to Auckland, and we went to visit Soul Machines.
Fantastic. Yes. Yeah.
And we were looking at sort of their digital assistants. And I can see that the technology, especially in learning where you might have a remote school that doesn't have a specialist physics teacher, for example, and you can have sort of a remote personality that simulates a teacher and simulates that, I guess, personal interface.
Yeah.
Can deliver the content. I do see those benefits. I'm not sure we're exactly there yet, but I can see where that might happen. Again, I still think that we like our personal face-to-face interaction, but I can see where those sorts of assistants are being developed and can be beneficial. Like if you think about where we can't maybe staff a classroom with a specialist teacher, we can have them as aides, assistants.
Yeah, I think it'd be very interesting to see how that fits in. And for those that are interested in Soul Machines, We've got at least one episode where Greg Cross is on the New Zealand Tech podcast, so one to look up. He's the chief executive there. Yeah, I think yesterday, public holiday here in Auckland, there were some sports tryouts, which my son went to, and there was one teacher there who was the cricket guy. There was another teacher who was not really involved too much, but needed to be there in whatever form, and I'm not quite sure what the different roles were. But from my observation was sort of largely observing, but also doing a bit of taking people's contact numbers and email addresses and whatnot. And I can see that sort of thing. If you've got a shortage of teachers, your assistant could be robotic, or if it's and one of the things I wondered about, because it was kind of a tryout for a couple of cricket teams. And I thought, hold on, this teacher is engaging with usually a very small number of people, and then there's a whole lot of other people that are bowling and batting and whatnot that they can't possibly be observing at the same time. And I'm thinking, how do they do that? And there was enough time. I'm sure all of that was handled well, but possibly you could have done the same thing in half the amount of time on what was a public holiday, if you'd maybe had a little bit of technology to do some of that looking. Now the technology is not there at this point in time, but if we look sort of 10 years out and the sort of budget challenges and so on we have, maybe that becomes part of the picture.
I did see a presentation from some PhD students actually in AI from Otago University, and they were working with the stadium down there to help capture more angles and images and bring a better experience for the viewers, so that you could actually see more of a 3D experience. And I can see where that technology could be used, for a coach or for having people observing from the sideline. That's giving you a slightly different view than just one person. Yes, so I think those things are in development.
Yes, and a lot of it relies on the concept of AGI, or artificial general intelligence, which becomes a lot more flexible. Now, delving into Grok Academy, really keen to learn more, about the organisation. Founded in Australia, you're the first employee here on the New Zealand side, which is really pleasing. But my understanding is you've had resources available to schools, and in fact, but before you joined Grok Academy, you were using the services of Grok Academy. But up until 2024, that's been something that schools have had to pay for. But the big news is that this is now funded through sponsorship, so schools can jump on board and use what you've got available for free.
Yes, so Grok Academy it's an educational nonprofit based in Australia. It was behind a paywall just to support, development of the resources. Small dedicated team, developing programming, computer science, and some digital literacy resources. Our CEO, James Curran, he was helped in his youth by some teachers sponsoring him to go to camps, really seeing some potential. And so he's always had this passion for helping learners reach their potential. He ended up, he has a PhD in computational linguistics by being identified at a young age, which he might not have had that opportunity. And then we've run there's the National Computer Science School, and that runs over the Christmas holiday, just after Christmas, early January, down in Sydney. And that has been sponsored by organizations to bring students together, expose them to digital technologies, career pathways, new tech that's coming out. And Richard White and WiseTech Global, which is, I think it's one of the top logistics companies in Australasia, they had sponsored that. And Richard decided he also was kind of a self-taught person, and he decided he wanted to give back. So he has pledged 1% of his profits for Grok Academy to enable us to offer our resources for free. So last year, free across Australia, launched free in New Zealand this year, Aotearoa, New Zealand, which is amazing. Before, it was behind a paywall, and so only maybe a small number of students could access it, maybe in a senior digital technologies NCA level course. And actually with the equity, it might be a higher decile school where they, charge fees, could afford it. So this brings it down so that everybody has access to the digital technologies teaching. So our online platform, now we have almost 50 educators on board developing new content, new resources. We have a teacher dashboard, so teachers can see the progress of their students through the learning. Teachers get access to solutions, tech support, lesson plans. So it's all there to help, support teachers integrate digital technologies into the curriculum. And we've got a whole variety of things. It can be block-based coding, microbits, Python, web design, data analytics, you name it. We probably have it design thinking. So
Wow.
it's a huge benefit. And I know through the subject association, through the DTTA forum we announced, and through some socials last year that it was coming on board. And those teachers that know about it, they're so excited to have a quality resource that they can access for free.
Well, I'm sure our listeners will be, if they're involved in the education sphere, will be spreading the word, and many listeners are parents as well, and will be nudging their schools to take advantage.
And just on that end, if there's a homeschool parent and they want to sign up, and they can access that as well. So
Great.
we want equity for all learners. And like I was, alluded to before, if you don't have that support early on, you don't see yourself being good at it, having confidence. So a student might not see that. And a lot of times teachers who are, we call them out of field, or not specialist digital technologies teachers, they're not confident. And so it sort of lends itself to that, I think this is in the too hard basket, and so we'll just try to avoid it maybe if we have that opportunity, or not teach it with maybe confidence. And this way people can, have some guidance and support and help students at a young age gain confidence. And hardworking, confident teachers actually have some resources that they can make that are pre-made online that they can utilize without having to reinvent the wheel all of the time. So I guess we're supporting both ends of the spectrum.
That's great. And so for teachers that are wanting to upskill themselves, what would those resources look like that are available?
So if they can, a teacher can do a course that's available to any of the students. But what we have when you're a verified teacher, we also have a teacher notes tab. So that goes into detail about what the concept is that's being taught, some maybe in different instances unplugged or offline activities they can do in the classroom, the solutions. So a teacher can actually work through the course and they're upskilling themselves at the same time. We also provide webinars, professional learning. We go to conferences, do workshops with teachers. We're going to go to the Technology Education Conference and do several workshops. So we're on the ground trying to support teachers as well. And we have a dedicated support team with any technical questions or help onboarding teachers into the platform.
That's brilliant. And I guess one thing that comes to mind, for me is you've got 50 educators, which is it's a really good base. But of course, once you've developed a lot of content and so on within the platform, then the next year swings around. You've already got all that content, so your 50 educators are able to go about both improving that content and lifting it, but also producing a broader and wider variety of content, I presume. So I imagine that as time goes on, you get a better and better capability there.
And we do, and we have this we call it our Fun Programming Challenge, the NCSS Coding Challenge. It's over 5 weeks. It starts in a couple of weeks, and students are introduced to new problem-solving concepts every week, and they're guided through, with live tutors available if they need it, trying to solve problems. So right now, for example, one of our things, we're refreshing that all to make sure that the problem content is improved and slightly different from last year. But also what we're trying to do, like work with providing professional learning, supporting teachers, and looking at ways through our engineering team in the background, how can we make the content better? How can we make use of new technologies such as AI? So we're able to, we're working on what we call next-gen Grok into improving the current offering. It's really good right now, but we have a team to keep supporting that.
And how broad is the content today? So I don't know. I'm thinking of let's say the homeschool sort of example that you mentioned someone that's homeschooling. If there's a particular area where maybe a child needed to learn, it's maybe outside of digital technology, do you go to sort of broader areas with the content?
We don't at the moment. Our main focus is digital technologies, although we have resources for primary, for lower primary, some unplugged activities, some logical, thinking, computational thinking activities. And then we go into, like I said, block-based coding using microbit simulators, so seeing how robotics works all the way through, cloud computing and looking how to analyze data and what that means. So there's a whole range of resources available. But what we are looking at is then in the future, expanding using our platform, our current platform, how can we support other areas of the curriculum? But right now, the main focus is in digital technologies and digital literacy. Yes.
Yeah, I think that there's going to be some interesting times ahead in terms of as we broaden out, what becomes available online to educators. And I mentioned correspondence school before, Te Kura. You can imagine you could end up with resources available from a range of sources that the effort that goes into produce it can really be heavily leveraged and bring about either better outcomes in different environments or just access to a broader range of capabilities to fill in some gaps and to maybe help with that personalisation side more and helping individuals who maybe they learn better with digital content too.
And one of the things that we're also looking at developing more of, we have some resources, but looking at more where we are doing the CS plus X, so maybe using computer science or programming in a biology context or in maths context or in a musical context. So we have some of those things, and we're looking at developing more content around that so that teachers and students can see how it is cross-curricular. So that's another area that we're expanding in.
Yeah, and there's so many of those opportunities. I mean, I look back many decades to, I think it was probably my first year in high school at Burnside High in Christchurch, and there was a music class, and we had to make an instrument or something. So of course I went home and programmed something up to make an electronic keyboard on my computer. So there were always those opportunities for crossover, which now more and more are probably relevant to people. So yeah. There's so many more things we could delve into. Is there anything else as we sort of wrap up, Julie, that you'd like to mention that you think might be interesting to our audience, whether that's for teachers and those within the education sector, parents or students that are listening, or anyone else more broadly that you think, there's an important area we haven't touched on?
I don't know that there's anything additional to what we've talked of quite a wide range of things, but I guess reiterating the point that it's an important foundational skill, and I think if we're not offering it to students, we're closing pathways and for them in the future, and to reach out to Grok Academy if now that you've heard of it, how can we get that into your school or homeschool in order to support learners? Because and maybe it's a really good opportunity for a parent might be listening, or somebody who's on a school board and think, are we actually doing enough in our school? And I think those conversations need to be had at that level. How are we supporting this in the school? Schools tend to have a lot of silos and focus on, it's a crowded curriculum. There's a lot going on, but you can bring in digital technologies into schools when with support. So I think it's important to have those conversations.
And how hard is it for a school to, at least on board in a small context, some use of Grok Academy? Because I can imagine there'll be people listening in or having conversations around Grok Academy, and the conversation will go, look, we're way too busy to look at that this year. Maybe next year or the year after that we'll look at it. And there'll be others that will be jumping in, boots and all, very, very quickly. How easy is it to get started?
It's very easy to get started. We've got all the schools on a school list. You can go into, if you go to grokacademy.org, it'll come up, start for free. You can use your Google or your Microsoft single sign-on just to sign in as a teacher. We do verify every teacher. So as long as you're a verified teacher, that's because some cheeky students were registering themselves as teachers so they could get all the answers. So we do actually personally verify that teachers are teachers. You can actually a principal or somebody can bulk upload the teachers in their school. And then from there, we have a simple import of your classes into either from a spreadsheet or from Google Classroom to upload the students. And then we've got a teacher dashboard where they can assign the student the courses that they want. So to dip the toe into, we've got a range of courses. So maybe dipping a toe in, contacting our support desk, and we will be running some onboarding webinars, which I'll post after this onto the socials when they come up, to help teachers and schools in Quota get started with it. So it's fairly simple.
Great. Oh, well, thank you, Julie. It's been fascinating. Now, there are some probably related episodes that some listeners may be interested in. One question we posed on episode 560 was, will streamer or YouTuber be a future job title for your child? But the range of content there that may be of interest. More recently, looking at AI in education and gaming. Episode 661, so a more recent one. So lots there to help out, but it's been a great conversation. So thank you for all your insights from the digital technology and education world, Julie. Thank you. And of course, a big thank you to our show partners, to Gorilla Technology, HP, Spark, 2 Degrees, and 1NZ. We really appreciate their support. And look, if you did find this something that might be relevant, maybe for your school or for others, then certainly feel free to share this episode with those that are relevant. And we'll look forward to catching everybody on the next episode. If you've been watching our video stream, then worth mentioning that you can also find us through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and whatever your favorite podcast app is. If you've been listening to the audio and you want to see us, then we do live stream most Tuesday afternoons, and you can find that by following myself, Paul Spain, on LinkedIn, or by tracking down NZ Tech Podcast on YouTube, X, or Facebook. All right, that's us. Thank you, and thanks very much, Julie.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. You can tell I'm passionate about technology education.
I think you've shared that with everyone today. Yeah, thanks so much.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.